Hello there, Algebra 2 students. Mr. Weber is here. Today we're going to talk about graphing sine and cosine graphs with a vertical shift. How exciting is that? All right, let's review real quick before we get started. Let's think about just how do we graph sine and how do we graph cosine. Remember, when we think about the unit circle, sine of theta and cosine of theta are kind of the same thing as the x and the y coordinate on the unit circle. So if you think about those poles, if you think about those four like kind of markers at the x and y axis, they'll help you remember what's going on. Okay, so if it says sine of theta, remember sine refers to the y coordinate. All right, so what you're going to think is 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. Okay, let's go ahead and graph that. 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. And once you have those 5 points, you can just follow that pattern in the negative direction. You can actually start at the back and work your way this way. So 0, -1, 0, +1, 0. And then you got your graph. And it is like a wave function that looks like this. Bam and bam. Okay? All right, let's try cosine. If you're thinking about cosine, it's the same 4 points we're going to look at, but instead of looking at the y coordinate, we're going to look at the x coordinate. Okay, so we're going to think about 1, 0, -1, 0, back to 1. All right, so let's graph that. 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. Okay, now let's work backwards. Oh, that should be a +1. I don't know why I put -1 there. Sorry. 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. You see how it follows the same pattern? And you can draw your graph. So if you're looking at these two and you're given a graph and you're asked, is this sine or is this cosine? Okay, the place you're going to look is the y-axis. If you look at where these things start, they will tell you what's going on. Look here at sine. It's starting in the middle of the wave. All right, the parent function starts at 0, but the key is it's the middle of the wave. If you look at cosine, it's going to start at 1, but really it's going to start at the extreme part of the wave, either the highest point or the lowest point. All right, if you look at the y-axis, you can tell really, really easily which one this is. It's all about knowing the clues. And if you can know the clues of what to look for, then you're going to be okay. Okay, here we go. On to our notes for today. So notice what we're doing is we have the A, remember from the last lesson, that A in front of our cosine or our sine stood for our amplitude. It told us how high or how low these graphs went. Now we're adding the plus K. K determines the vertical shift of the graph. This is just like it's been for every other graph that we've done. So this is great. Great news for you. Plus K is going to make it go up. Minus K is going to make it go down. All right, and there's a simple way that you... All right, so here we go. Here's our first graph, plain old sine of x. All right, so let's think about what we know. If it's sine, we're going to think starting at 0, 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. Okay, so let's graph those. Take that same thing and work your way backwards. All right, so 0, -1, 0, +1, 0. And you can put those negative graphs in, negative points in. So you see how you get this nice wave. Notice all of your top points and all of your bottom points should be on the same line. If you ever kind of bounce at a place that's not the same, so some students might accidentally put this number up here at 1 up here, in which case the graph would like bounce like on this axis, and that would be a big clue that this is not right. So all of the high points should be high points and all of the low points should be low points. And if they're not the same, you made a mistake somewhere. All right, so let's go ahead and graph this. We got our nice curvy wave here. Mr. Webb, you're so good at doing this with the mouse. I know. Okay, here we go. So now they ask us for two things. One, the midline, and one, the range. So the midline is the line that's in the middle. If it's a parent function, that midline is going to be right there at y equals 0. The range, highest point's +1, lowest point's -1, easy peasy. Okay? Now, look at what happens in number 2. So in number 2, we have a vertical shift. Well, what is that vertical shift? Yeah, it's +1. So we should expect this whole graph to move up 1 unit. All right, let's just make sure that we're all on the same page there. We expect everything to move up 1 unit. We're going to start the same way. We're going to think about 0, +1, 0, -1, 0, because it's sine. Okay, and now, this is the part that's amazing. All you have to do is add 1 to each of those numbers. All right, so we're going to add 1, and look what happens. 0 becomes 1, 1 becomes 2, 0 becomes 1, -1 becomes 0, and 0 becomes +1. And look at what happens when you graph it. Just graph those points. 1, 2, 1, 0, 1. Okay, so start over, work your way backwards, go this way. We have the 1, now we'll go to 0, 1, 2, 1, and then we can go ahead and graph it. Bam. Bam. Now where's our midline? Is it still going to be at y equals 0? No, because y equals 0 is not the middle anymore. So where's the midline? It's right in the middle. It's at y equals 1. What's your range? From 0 to 2. Now, I'll give you a little secret here. You ready for this? This midline is going to correspond to your vertical shift. All right, because look, you start at 0 usually. So if you go up 1 from 0, you're going to be at 1. If you go down 5 from 0, you're going to be at -5. So whatever this vertical shift is, that should relate to the midline of the function. Amazing, right? All right, let's try a couple more. Cosine. All right, so we're mixing it up on you. Remember, you got to think about different things. With cosine, we're thinking 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. All right, so go ahead and graph those. 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. All right, we'll work backwards. We'll start at this 0 and work our way backwards. 0, -1, 0, +1. And now we can go ahead and graph it. Ba-bam, ba-bam, ba-bam. Midline, right there at 0. That's not at 0. It looks like I messed up my graph. Sorry. There's the midline. And what's the range? -1 to +1. All right, just to be clear, there's a mistake here. This is not the midline. Midline's at 0. All right, look at 4. Man, Mr. Weber, you're really making this hard. Yeah, we're trying. All right, but look how easy this is. It looks hard, but it's not. You guys can do this. Okay, start in the middle. All right, what do we see here? Cosine. So we're going to think 1, 0, -1, 0, +1. The next thing we're going to deal with is this 2. All right, so we're going to multiply everything by 2. 1 becomes 2. 0 times anything is still 0. -1 times 2 is -2. 0 times anything is still 0. And 1 times 2 is 2. Then we're going to subtract 2. So you see how we're taking this one piece of the equation at a time. We start in the middle with our cosine. We multiply it by 2 because that's what the outside function is. And in terms of order of operations, we're going to multiply first, and then we're going to do addition or subtraction. So now we'll just subtract 2 from everything. So 2 becomes 0. 0 becomes -2. -2 becomes -4. And we got our 5 points. So graph them. 0, -2, -4, -2, 0. All right, follow it backwards. And you get a big old W. Not really, but it looks kind of like a W. But it's a cosine wave. There we go. All right, what's the equation of our midline? Find that line in the middle. Y equals -2. What's the amplitude? Remember the shortcut for doing that? That's the absolute value of A, which is 2. Our range from -4 to 0. All right, so I'm encouraging you to pause the recording now, see if you can do 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and then when you're ready, go ahead and hit play and see if you're right. You're probably like, Mr. Weber, 5 is just crazy. I don't know what you were doing. All right, so it looks crazy, right? It's because it's written in the wrong way. We usually don't see these sine functions written this way, but remember with our equations, we can shift the order as long as we do what? We can rearrange these terms as long as we keep the signs the same. So my question is, this 2, is it positive or negative? The 2 is positive. The sign, is it positive or negative? It is negative. So as long as we keep sign negative and we keep 2 positive, we're allowed to switch the order of those terms. So these two statements are exactly the same. And this one, I hope, makes more sense to you. And you're like, okay, I can do that. If that was your only problem on 5, hit pause right now, try it on your own, and then we'll come back and solve it together. Okay, so it is sine. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to think 0, 1, 0, -1. Okay, well, what's the next piece we got to deal with? The next piece we're going to deal with is this negative out here. All right, so multiply everything times -1. So all the signs change. Then we're going to add 2. So add 2 to each of these points. And we end up with 2, +1, 2, 3, 2. Graph it. 2, +1, 2, 3, 2. Work your way backwards to find your negatives. 3, 2, 1, 2. And now you can go ahead and do your graph. All right, so you can tell this is a sine wave because it's crossing the y-axis in the middle of the wave. And you can tell this is a negative sine wave because look what direction it's going as it crosses. It's moving downward. That means it has to be a negative out front. Oh, I never realized that. Well, that's why you come to this virtual class, to learn all these cool things. All right, so here we go. Midline, where is that? Right there in the middle, y equals 2. Range, +1 to +3. And the last thing is our shift. All right, so what is our vertical shift? Here we're going up 2. Okay, almost done. A couple more to do. You guys are doing great. Let's try number 6. Still with sine, so we're still going to think 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. Now we're going to multiply by 1/2. And just to make things easier, 1/2, what is that really? That's 0.5 as a decimal. That might be an easier way of thinking about it. So we're going to multiply by, I didn't change this, +1/2, sorry. The dangers of copy and paste. And what's the next thing we're going to do? We're going to subtract 3. Fixed it. All right, so here we go. -3, -2.5, -3, -3.5, -3. There's our graph. -3, -3.5. Do as best you can. Don't worry about it being exact. All right, work backwards. Get those negatives. And then you can go ahead and graph these. Up, down, and up, and down, and up. Notice that this number A here, the A number, was less than 1. Okay, so what's happening? It's compressing the graph. You see how the graph looks a little bit narrower? It's compressing the graph. Where's our midline? Right there at y equals -3. What's the amplitude? 0.5 or 1/2. They're both the same. And what's our shift? Down 3. Doing okay? We're almost done. You're doing great. 2 more. Someone messed up on his animations. All right, look at number 7. It's cosine. So we're going to think here 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. Then we're going to deal with this 3 out front. So we're going to multiply everything times 3. So 1 becomes 3. 0 times anything is still 0. -1, -3. 0 is still 0. 1 times 3 is 3. Then we're going to add 1. So ever these values get added 1. I hope you see that this is a kind of an easy way of getting these 5 points and building these graphs without thinking about the unit circle every time. So, my goal is that you think about that unit circle the first couple times that you do it so you understand where it comes from. But then you're just thinking about these 5 points. If it's cosine, you know it's starting at 1. If it's sine, you know it's starting at 0 in the middle. And you're just alternating up and down, up and down, up and down. Because that's what these functions do. They're periodic. They repeat over and over and over again. All right, so here we go. 4, 1, -2, 1, 4. Work your way backwards. And you get a big old cosine graph. Okay, notice this one, the A value here is bigger than 1, so it's going to be a stretch. What's the amplitude? 3. What's the range? -2 to 4. All right, look at 8. Were you confused by 8? I hope not. We just got to rearrange that term. What's it going to look like? -2 cosine x plus 1. So where are we starting? We're starting with cosine. Cosine starts with 1. All right, so we're thinking 1, 0, -1, 0, +1. We're going to multiply everything by -2. Notice the signs are going to change, and our graph should be reflected upside down. And then we're going to add 1. So here we go. There's our points. Wait a minute, Mr. Weber. I don't think you did that right. I didn't. Let's fix it. Let's fix it with blue. So ignore my points. I was just trying to make a mistake so that you could kind of see for yourself what that would look like. So it's going to be -1, +1, +3, +1, and -1. And this makes sense because it's a negative graph, so it should start at the bottom point instead of the top point. Let's work this backwards. So I've just given you an opportunity to, find mistakes and to see how to do this on your own. Such a good teacher. Clearly did not make a mistake on my own. Some of you are still listening to this. All right, here we go. So we're good there. I'm going to skip through all of my animations because they're going to be all wrong. But where's the midline? The midline is going to be right here at the middle. Let me change my color here so you can see this differently. There we go. All right, so here's the midline. Right there, it should be at y equals 1. And then what's our range? Let's find the high point and the low point. High point's going to be at 3. Low point's going to be at -1. So we're going -1 to 3. Okay, and I'm going to skip through all my animations because they're going to be wrong. And we'll see what's next. Okay, 2 more equations. These look hard, but all of these problems have little breadcrumbs of clues in there. And as long as you can recognize the clues, you should be okay here. All right, so look at number 9. It says write an equation for a cosine function that has an amplitude of 3. It's been reflected over the x-axis and shifted up 2 units. We're going to take this one piece at a time. All right, so we're going to write an equation. So we're thinking equal sign, y equals. What type of equation are we writing? It's a cosine function. So let's start there. Y equals cosine of theta. So far, you could put x in there, that's fine. What's the next thing that's happening to this graph? Well, we know it has an amplitude of 3. Where does the amplitude go? That goes out front. So there should be a 3 out front. So now we're looking at 3 cosine theta. Great. Let's keep reading. Reflected over the x-axis, reflected over the x-axis. What makes it reflect over the x-axis? That's a negative. Just make it negative. Boom. And look, we got like 3 words left in this sentence. Shifted up 2 units. What's going to cause it to go up 2 units? That's a vertical shift plus 2. Boom. If you read the question on its own, it's easy to get totally lost and feel like, I don't know what's going on. Break it down piece by piece. What type of function is it? And then what do you know? Everything has a place, and you guys are good at this. You know where this stuff goes because it's been the same for almost every single function we've talked about this school year. So it's all about taking those little pieces and putting them where they need to go. And if you make a mistake a couple times, that's okay. Learn from it and try it again the next time. Let's look at 10. 10's a little bit trickier. If you want to pause it and try it on your own, I say go for it. And then we'll take it. All right, so we're writing the equation. We're thinking y equals. What type of equation is this? It's a sine function. So we're going to start with y equals sine of theta. I'm going to leave some space because I don't know what I have to do. Now the next piece is a little more tricky. They say it has a range of -4 to +2. Let's think about what we know about that. -4 to +2. How many units is it? If you start at -4 and you end up at +2, that's a total of 6 spaces. -4 to +2. So -4 to 0 is 4, 0 to 2 is 2, 4 and 2 is 6. Now remember, that range is the maximum and the minimum. The amplitude is always half of that. It's the distance from the midline to the max or the min. So all you got to do is cut this in half to find the amplitude. So if the range is -4 to 2, a total of 6 units, then the amplitude has to be 3. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and if you know that, you throw a 3 out front. What else do we know? The midline's y equals -1. Well, remember, this midline refers to your vertical shift. If it's at -1, that means it had to have moved down 1 unit. If it moves down 1 unit, we have to have a -1. Oh my goodness, Mr. Weber. On the outside here. So far, so good? Okay. I hope you guys bear with me. I almost got that whole thing built with no mistakes. I'll try better next time. But I hope you're doing well. If you have questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have your textbook, you can find this same information on page 381 to 390. But we are here for you. All right. Good luck. I'll talk to you later.